Here's how to elevate your home with $8 Rub and Buff. Firstly, I got silver leaf and gold leaf Rub and Buff and decided to make custom colors with these. Then I got some green painter's tape and totally protected the porcelain of the toilet. Then I went in using a blush brush, which is really nice and fluffy and perfect for this application, and then applied that toned down gold that really ended up like a champagne. Then I removed the tape to reveal elevated builder grade plumbing. This super cheap Walmart silver finish needed an upgrade. So I took another makeup brush, this one is an old eyeshadow brush, and brushed on that same champagne Rub and Buff. And you can see already just how nice and warm that finish is compared to the old grommet. I repeated this for all the grommets as well as the curtain rod. And that did a great job of warming things up. I am not about to drop $1,000 on a frame TV, but the gold leaf Rub and Buff did a great job at giving me the same look for only a few bucks. I was admittedly a little bit messy when I painted this door and got some paint on the hinges, but luckily that gold leaf came in handy to give it a classic brass hinge look. These light switches were far too plain, but that slightly warm silver was perfect to give it new life.
Do you have an old beat-up washer and dryer that still works great but could use an upgrade? Then this is your sign to head to the Dollar Tree and pick up some contact paper. First, I used a clean cloth and some rubbing alcohol to clean the top of my dryer, the lid to my washer, and the door to my dryer. Starting with the top of my dryer, I laid the contact paper over top, pattern side facing up, and made sure it was centered and even over the top of the dryer before cutting a piece off the roll. Then I used a pencil to trace around the indented portion of the dryer top, taking my time to make sure I was tracing exactly where I wanted the paper to sit. I used a pair of sharp scissors to cut the shape out, then placed the cutout contact paper back on top of the dryer and dry fitted it to make sure that the piece would fit nicely in the indented portion. I made adjustments as needed to make it fit well and erased any pencil marks, then moved on to application. Next, I peeled the backing off the paper and slowly began applying the contact paper to the dryer. It was helpful to take it one section at a time, smoothing each part down fully before pulling off more of the backing. To get better adhesion and less bubbles, I pulled the bottom of the contact paper taut while applying it. Moving over to the washer lid, the process was similar. Once the lid was covered, I wrapped the paper around the edges and trimmed away any excess. I also used a scraper to make sure there was good adhesion on the back side as well. Moving lastly to the door of the dryer, this was the trickiest area to cover because it's vertical. I taped the contact paper to the dryer, then used a pencil to trace around the handle and cut it out with an X-Acto knife. Then I began applying the contact paper, starting in the left-hand corner, the same way I applied it to the other areas. Once the paper was completely adhered to the door, I cut a separate piece to cover the remaining portion at the bottom of the door. I wrapped the contact paper around the edges of the door, trimming away any excess as needed, then moved on to the hinges. I also went back and addressed any air bubbles by using a pin to pop them and smooth them down. I love how much better my washer and dryer look and how easy and inexpensive this makeover was.
Do you have paint chips or scratches on your cupboards? I got these paint pens from Amazon and they came with a syringe. I grabbed the original paint to match the cupboards and I stirred it and used the syringe to fill the paint pen. I placed the brush end on and gave the end a few turns until the paint started to come out. Before touching up my cupboards though, I wiped them clean with a cloth and made sure they were dry. Then I used the paint pen to cover any chipped areas. The brush is really soft and worked well to feather the paint in. I tried it on the tops and front of my cupboards. In some spots, I did 2 coats to really feather it in. And here's what it looks like after it dried. I can't believe how well it worked and how quick it was, so I tried another area in my home that needed touching up. I dropped something heavy down my staircase and it did some serious damage. I wiped the area clean, filled the white paint pen up with the paint that matched my staircase and the rest of the house, and I touched up all the exposed wood parts. It feels so good to have this job done, and now I'm wondering why it took me this long to do it.
Grab some pretty washi tape for so many fun uses around the house. Make a decorative edging for a door frame by running washi tape around the top and sides of the frame. Bring a pop of color into any closet or bookshelf by attaching washi tape to the front edges. Pick up a simple picture frame at the dollar store and jazz it up with your choice of washi tape around the front, side, top, and bottom edges. Create a fun dry erase board by attaching rows of washi tape to the glass insert, wrapping any excess around the edges. Flip the frame over and trim the excess for a neat and clean finish. Reinsert the glass with the washi tape on the inside of the frame and add a piece of white paper so the pattern pops. Put the frame back together and use in a kitchen, entryway, or office. Take a plain planter and attach the tape around the top edge, repeating if you like down the height of the planter.
I have a large collection of mismatched jars and vases that I've been wanting to give a makeover. To get them ready, I've gone ahead and given them a good cleaning, and I just want to remove any unwanted bits like this twine. It's time to paint them and start their transformation. I've chosen this nice black chalk paint because I know it will stick to all three surfaces. Before the second coat of black paint dries though, I want to add some dark gray to the top of each vase. I'm brushing it on and then I'm using a cloth to blend it into the black paint. With all the paint dry, it's time to add some pattern to them. I've collected a few pieces of old lace and I'm going to use it to get a cool effect over the paint. I'm going to wrap the lace around the vases and then dab it with white paint. I really like using a large sponge dipped in the paint to do this. The sponge allows me to cover a large area and work around the curves of each of the pieces. I can also use a thin paintbrush to dab on the white paint as well in smaller areas. Look how cool that pattern is that the lace and the paint has created. With the pattern transferred, the last thing I want to do is give each one an aged look. I'm going to use some black wax and just rub it all over the painted surfaces. How fun are these vases now? I love that each one looks a little different and has its own personality. I hope this has inspired you to give your vases a quick makeover as well.
Here's a quick and inexpensive way to update an old mirror. I grabbed this faux wood wallpaper off of Amazon and it cost me less than $6 for the roll. I measured the width that I needed to cut the paper in order to fully fit this kind of mirrored border that I already had on the mirror. Once I had that width, I cut strips of the wallpaper a bit wider than what I needed. Then I simply placed the paper along the border on the left-hand side. It went on smoothly and easily. Once it was positioned where I wanted it to be, I used a straight razor to cut along the mirror's edge. I did the same thing along the right-hand side of the mirror, and then I worked my way to the bottom. I measured the width that I needed, and then cut it so that I would have a little bit of overlap and a really good seam on the sides. The final piece was my installation across the top. It looked really great, it adhered easily, and then of course all I needed to do was to continue to go around it a little more just to fine-tune the edges and make sure that everything was attached and adhered in the way that I wanted it to look. I hope this inspires you to use some peel and stick faux paper to create a different look in your bathroom.